Hey guys, starting something new. So if you've been watching me for a while, you know that I steal a lot of my ideas from my dad. And that's just because he's got 40 plus years of leadership experience under his belt. And I steal a lot of ideas from my mom too. But my mom and my dad both steal those ideas from dead people. But to bring to the forefront some of the things that were relevant in my household when I was growing up, I am going to start a series rereading famous quotes, speeches, stories, what have you, throughout history that have been really relevant in my life growing up with my parents, but also really relevant in the military in general. And so the first one I want to start with is The Man in the Arena by Teddy Roosevelt. Teddy Roosevelt, as we know, President of the United States, Rough Rider, literally like why we have teddy bear, great mustache, loved the national parks. But he was also a very well-renowned orator. The full speech is called Citizens in a Republic, and he gave it at the Sorbonne in Paris. And it was a 44-minute speech, so I will not be rereading the entire thing for my sake and for everyone else's. But I am gonna read the most famous portion of the speech, which is referred to as The Man in the Arena. I picked this one first because this is a quote that I grew up hearing a lot in my household. My dad loves it, my mom loves it. There was a point where they were giving it framed as gifts to people in the military. I have seen it on the walls of several senior leaders in the military since I have started my career. And I think it's so relevant because it's basically, if you're not willing to do something, don't criticize the people who are. And I think willing is a really, really good word because it implies a lot of things. But I also think able. If you are not able to do something, do not criticize the people who are. And in the military specifically, I think that's a great reminder to be humble about who you criticize because you are not doing what they do. And that is a lot of comment on the effort that goes into doing whatever that person is doing. But more importantly, it also goes into the nuance and the stuff behind the scenes that you don't see. So you are criticizing the surface level without knowing the full story. And it's also kind of one of those things where you're probably never going to know the full story. And if you are in a position as a citizen in a republic, a contributing member of society, a contributing member of an organization, you should pause to criticize someone who is doing something that you cannot or will not do yourself. And that translates a lot. Like in the military, you always hear never ask your soldiers to do something that you yourself are not willing to do. But it also translates to like, hey, don't criticize that command team, that leader, that whoever, because you don't know all of the decisions in the background leading to that decision. And I tried really hard to tell my students that when I was an instructor, like, hey, like when you're in that position making those decisions, I hope you remember how much you did or did not criticize other people in that position now that you kind of understand how complicated being a leader is. So that's my opening thoughts. I'm gonna read you the quote now. It is not the critic who counts, not the man who points out how the strong man stumbles, or where the doer of deeds could have done them better. The credit belongs to the man who is actually in the arena, whose face is marred by dust and sweat and blood, who strives valiantly, who errs, who comes short again and again, because there is no effort without error and shortcoming, but who does actually strive to do the deeds, who knows great enthusiasms, the great devotions, who spends himself in a worthy cause, who at the best knows in the end the triumph of high achievement, and who at the worst, if he fails, at least fails while daring greatly, so that his place shall never be with those cold and timid souls who neither know victory nor defeat. Great quote, really powerful. And I also think it's worth mentioning that Roosevelt specifically emphasizes you are going to fail. Failure is inevitable. Like, to do great things is to fail and recover from them. And I think that's super important because there's all of these conversations about risk-averse leadership and people who are so afraid of failure that they end up failing in new and creative ways trying to avoid that failure. I also want to highlight that Brené Brown named her book Daring Greatly from that quote, if you caught it in there. And she is a fantastic author. Watch the TED Talks if you've never seen them. Read her books, highly recommend. Daring Greatly was one of the first books that one of my first mentors got me in the military when I was a second lieutenant, and it changed my life. So lots of things to think about, and a lot of ways you can see how that quote is still relevant and how it has influenced us as a society in 2025. So this is definitely going to have to be a YouTube video, and I will post the full video there, but I'll chop this up a little bit for Instagram as well. If you actually want this series to continue, please let me know, because I'll record a couple, and then if it doesn't really get any traction, it'll probably hang out for a little bit. So, but thanks for listening to me yap, and I'll see you guys later.